Hello everyone, welcome to iEngineering Training Guide to Dynamics 365 Finance Module. I am Ankit Sharma, Group Project Finance Manager. In this session, I will give you general briefing and understanding of Accounts Payable module. So let's get this started. So before we go to ERP, let's understand who are vendors. Vendors are company, individual, partnership firm, LLP, or any form of business organization that provides service or supply material to us. What can be a type of vendors? Vendors can be internal, like employee, owners, etc. Intercompany, subsidiaries, group companies, and external, that does not fall in the first and the second category. Why do we need to keep the records of the vendor? From the accounts perspective, when commercial transactions are entered, records are required to be maintained. Why do we need them? To enable correct payments, to enable correct cost booking, to enable analysis and enhance the decision-making process. So how do we maintain the records in Dynamics 365 and how does it function? So from the ERP perspective, all vendors or any vendors with whom the transaction are to be entered, for them we need to create a vendor code. How to create the vendor code we'll see in the later videos. So first we need to create a vendor code. When we generate a vendor code, during that process, we need to assign a vendor group to vendor code, and this particular vendor group is linked to the GL that will impact the financial transaction. So all entries relating to vendors, invoices, payment are to be done through vendor code in Accounts Payable module. So while creating a vendor code, we assign the vendor group. This vendor group we can bifurcate into three major categories. The first one are for the external vendors, second for the internal vendor, and the third one for the intercompany or the group accounts. So let's go to vendor groups relating to external vendors. From V1 to V17 are the categories of the suppliers that do not provide fixed assets, means they are the supplier or the category of supplier that do not deal with fixed asset, or else they do not provide services to us that are in the nature of fixed assets, and they are linked to 401100 in the chart of account and 409000 for the advances. V18 to V25 are the suppliers or the categories of suppliers that are providing fixed assets to the company, and they are linked to 403 000 228 000 for the advances, and V1027 is relating to tax and tax authority, which are linked to 400001. If we go to the internal vendors, we have V50 for local personnel. Actually, this is for the employee for whom we give an advance for operational expenses. For example, we give an advance request. So as we see earlier that internal vendors are employee. So we need to create them under the vendor group V50, and this vendor 50 group is linked to 421001 and 428100 for the advances. V51 for expatriate consultants and V53 for employee loans, salary advance and others. So there is one question that can come to your mind, that V50 we have a code and it can also be created under V53. Yes, like the purpose of having the multiple vendor groups here is to segregate the type of advances or funds given to an employee. Like if we give an advance to an employee for operational expenses, we create a vendor code for him and assign vendor group V50 for operation. And so all advances that we give in the nature of operation, is accounted under the code which is created under V50. If we give a salary advance, loan, or any type of advances which is not a usual operational transaction, for that we create the code for the same employee under the group V53, and all the transactions relating to the nature like loan, salary and advances are accounted under that particular vendor code. So an employee can have a two vendor code, one relating to operational expenses for which the vendor group is V50 and the ledger link it 421001, and V53 relating to non-operational advances which is linked to 421001. If we go to the third type, intercompany accounts. So here we have V50 intercompanies funding, V61 for related party transaction, V62 for the shareholders, V53 for the intercompany operation, V64 for the shareholders holding. So for the operational point of view or for the operations, the only relevant vendor group is V61 and V64. V61 is relating to the related parties. For example, let's take the case of Ekistruck. Ekistruck is a related party. If we have any transaction with the Ekistruck entity, we need to create the vendor code and assign V61 as a vendor group. Okay, and this V61 is linked to 451500 in the chart of account. Similarly, all the operations have their balances with Engineering Sal Offshore. So Engineering Sal Offshore vendor code you need to create and you need to assign a vendor group V64. This V64 is linked to 451111 in the chart of account. So one question will come in your mind that when all the transactions relating to our vendors are done in the vendor code, then how would the system know whether it's a payable account or it's a prepayment account? So this you have to select while posting a transaction. When you are posting a transaction, you have to change the posting profile based on the nature of transaction. By default, it will be general posting profile. The general posting profile means you receive an invoice and you book an invoice in the ERP. So for the general part, it is 401 because the prepayment transaction are not a regular transactions in case of the supplier. So if you are making an advance payment or booking an advance invoice for the supplier, you need to change the posting profile. If you can see over the screen, the two posting profile are visible. GEN is a general vendor posting profile. If you select this, the vendor transaction will go in 401100, 421100, 421124. But if you change the posting profile to the prepayment, that is for the advances, it will get an order that the 409 account is to be used, 428100 and then 451122. So to sum up this session, for all the transactions that are relating to the vendors, we need to create a vendor code. We need to assign a vendor group. Vendor groups have been classified into three major types: external vendor group, internal vendor group, and intercompany. From V1 to V17s, they are related to 401100. V50, V51, V53 are relating to the internal, and V61 and V64 specifically to be used only by the operation, and V60, V62 and V63 are to be used by the Engineering Sal Offshore company. A trick point that for an employee we can have two accounts, one is for the operational and one is for their loans and advances. So when we are posting the transaction, we need to make sure that we are selecting the right posting profile and accordingly the system will understand which account the transaction need to be parked. In external vendor group, either it is for 401100 or it is 409. If we change the posting profile to the prepayments, the transaction would be parked in the 409 account. Thank you so much.